today we're going to see. So in the previous two episodes, we've looked at how much a present investment will be worth in the future if it's discounted annually. That means the interest that will be calculated on your investment at time t is equal to zero. It's only calculated once a year, so annually. But what if there are situations where interest is paid on your investment, non-annually? That means not one time a year, but maybe monthly. That means the interest is calculated 12 times a year, maybe quarterly, 4 times a year. So we're gonna explain the concept and see an example. Uh, so previously we've seen how to calculate the future value of a single sum. So future value equals present value times 1 plus the discount rate raised to n. Right. It's the same in this case, except there's going to be a little modification on the formula. The future value equals, or the future value at n is the number of years, is 1 plus rs over m raised to m. And now we're going to see what these mean. Uh, so what happens usually is that, for example, some banks have investments called certificate of deposits. Certificate of deposits. These are like a savings account, or we'll call them CDs in short. So these are basically like accounts at a bank that you can open, like a savings account or a checking account. But how they are different from a savings account, for example, is that in two ways. The first is they pay a little bit more interest than a savings account, and then there may be restrictions by the bank for you to not withdraw money as you want. So you have to, let the money sit in there for whatever period the bank wants it to sit in there. For example, let's say you go to a bank. Before that, let's just explain these terms. So let's say you have a bank that pays interest rate monthly on your certificate of deposit. So you invest X amount of money, and then they pay interest on that money that you've put into the account every month, right? But that monthly interest rate, in their disclosure, in their documents, they don't tell you the interest rate that they pay monthly. They just tell you the annual interest rate. So that's called the stated annual interest rate. So RS is called the stated annual interest rate. So a bank might come and say, well, we have what's called a certificate of deposit. Do you want to open that account? And we pay 8% interest for that certificate of deposit. And that when they say 8%, they're telling you this the annual interest rate. For example, they may say 8%. So that's the annual interest rate. And M is the number of compounding periods. Now, so let's say this certificate of deposit, they say, oh, it has an annual interest rate of 8%, right? But then they say this is compounded quarterly. We calculate the interest rate 4 times a year, right? So M is equals to 4 in this case, quarterly. So if you want to calculate the quarterly interest rate instead of the annual interest rate, the annual interest is what they tell you, which is they say it's 8%. But you want to, since it's compounded quarterly, so every quarter you want to see how much interest rate is applied quarterly. So that is here RS over N over M, which is 0.08 divided by 4. I believe that's 0.02 or 2%. So for this certificate of deposit, for this account that you're going to open with the bank, they will pay you 2% per quarter, right? Annually, they say it's 8%, but Since it's quarterly, that 8% divided by 4, because it's quarterly, it's paid, the interest rate is paid quarterly, the interest rate or the discount rate is 2% per quarter, right? Okay, so that's RS over M is simply the interest rate per compounding period. Now, we have here MN is simply the number of compounding periods multiplied by the number of years. And that just gives you the number of compounding periods. This is called the number of compounding periods. So let's say the certificate of deposit matures in 2 years, Unlike a savings account where you can basically take money in and out, for a certificate of deposit, there is a maturity period. Let's say the maturity period is in 2 years. So you open an account, a CD account with a bank, you put money. So when you are allowed to take the money out of that account will be in 2 years. So that's called the maturity period. And the maturity period for this particular example might be 2 years, right? So since it's compounded quarterly, for the first year, it will be compounded 4 times, right? Let's say for the first year, since it's compounded quarterly, they will compound it 4 times. Second year, it's compounded quarterly. Again, they compound it 4 times. 4 times. So in 2 years, totally, in 2 years, it's compounded what? 8 times, right? So simply M times N is the number of compounding periods, which is they compound it 4 times per year times for 2 years. So it's compounded 8 times in that 2-year period. So now let's see an example. Let's see an example to make this clear. So let's say you go to a bank. You go to a bank, right? And you wanted to open a certificate of deposit account, okay? The bank says that this CD account has 2-year maturity period. And they say the money in your account, or the money you're going to put in your account, is compounded quarterly, right? And then they have also, this CD account has also a feature where they say the interest is reinvested at the same interest rate. So whatever interest rate is, for example, they apply, let's say 2% per quarter, whatever money there is, like, so you invest X amount of money, they apply 2% interest rate on that. Whatever money comes out of that will also receive a 2% interest. So whatever interest accumulates on your principal is a 2%, or a same type of interest rate is applied to that interest, whatever interest you get. So the reinvestment of interest is at the same interest rate. So, and then the question is, like, how much money will the CD, or the certificate of deposit, be worth in 2 years? All right. Let's say you invested 10,000 today. Let's say you invest 10,000 in a CD today. The question is, how much money will the CD be worth? And of course, they say here, compounded quarterly, another, the stated annual interest rate. I forgot that. And stated annual interest rate of 8%. All right, let's pull out the formula. The formula says that the future value at n is the present value multiplied by 1 plus the stated annual interest rate divided by how frequently it is compounded to the power of the number of compounding periods, which is m times n, right? So let's say you invested $10,000 in that certificate of deposit account. So present value, today you invested $10,000, right? They said, oh, this certificate of deposit pays an annual interest rate of 8%. So your RS is 8% or 0.08. And they say this certificate of deposit is compounded quarterly, right? So your M is 4 times, okay? And we have a maturity period of 2 years. And let's calculate this. So the FV at 2 after 2 years is 10,000 times 1 plus the annual interest rate, which is 8%, divided by the number of compounding periods. Not the number of compounding periods, but how frequently it's compounded per year, which is 4 times, which is quarterly. So 4 divided by the raised to the number of compounding periods. That is how frequently it's compounded per year, 4 times for 2 years, right? M times n. So this is simply 10,000. 1 plus, this is 0.02 raised to 8. Excuse me. This is simply 10,000. 1.02 raised to 8. And when you calculate, this will be about 11,716 and 59 cents. So if you invest $10,000 into a certificate of deposit account at a bank, which has a maturity period of 2 years and an annual interest rate or a stated annual interest rate of 8%, that is compounded quarterly, where there's a reinvestment of the interest at the same interest rate. So after 2 years, your CD, which you invested $10,000, will be worth 11,716 and 59 cents at maturity, which is after 2 years. I hope this was helpful.